Buenas tardes a todos. I will be sharing my screen to talk about the presentation Me Vacuno Porque. Just give me a moment. Full screen. Present.
Antonio, and
Awesome.
we have the interpretation, so feel free to speak in English or Spanish, lo que tú quieras.
Oh, perfecto. Muchas gracias. Thank you. I'll focus in English because the presentation is in English. So thank you so much. I will be presenting on Me Vacuno Porque, the visual arts against COVID. It's an artist's perspective on vaccine equity. And my name is Antonio Alanis. Thank you again, Doctora Maradiega, for that wonderful introduction. My first slide will be on the Me Vacuno Porque podcast. So let's, I'll be sharing that. Can you let me know if you can hear it? No, okay. So let me
When you
share.
Antonio, when you go to share, it's going to ask you to add the full
Full audio?
Yes.
Okay. What about now? ¿Cuándo decidiste vacunarte? ¿Dónde
Sí.
estabas? ¿Qué pasó por tu mente? Y llévanos a ese momento que dijiste, bueno, voy a ponerme la vacuna.
Lo hice precisamente, pues por protegerme definitivamente. Lo que hice fue protegerme. No me quería enfermar.
Estoy haciendo algo para mí y estoy haciendo algo para los demás para cuidarlos.
Y fue de un lado de cariño, de amor, que yo por eso, por mí, fue la razón más que nada de la cual yo me quería vacunar.
También de cuidarme a mí, pero cuidar a la comunidad.
La ciencia de la vacuna tiene aproximadamente 25 años que la estamos estudiando. Y es como quien hace un bizcocho. Si ya te sabes la receta, tienes los ingredientes, lo vas a hacer más fácil.
Creo que esas son unas cosas que aprendí de la pandemia, es el valor que tenemos como humanos.
Que yo los invito a que se vacunen, ¿verdad?
Yo sabía como que no era solamente esa oportunidad de vacunarme, sino que era te vas a vacunar.
Wonderful. So that was the podcast preview from Me Vacuno Porque. And I will talk a little bit more about who I am and why this podcast originated, as well as give you more context in terms of how we can move forward from this health crisis, which is COVID-19 and the pandemic, right? So first, I am a visual artist, a multimedia visual artist, focusing on illustration as well as muralism, and I'm not a medical care provider, full disclaimer. And it's important for me to talk about this because when I applied to the Me Vacuno Porque project, I wanted to join efforts as an artist against the pandemic. Since 2020, Doctora Maradiega alluded to my work in terms of working with community members and raising awareness about COVID and health and other themes and topics. So this podcast is sponsored by Black Public Media, which is a national organization focusing on storytelling, and funds come from NICE, as well as the CDC and the Department of Health and Human Services, which allowed us to promote and do this project. The Black Public Media has been an amazing partnering organization that back in 2023, around March of that year, did a health summit called COVID and Vaccine Equity Summit, and invited a group of 3 people to apply for a grant to raise awareness about COVID vaccines and equity as well. And the grant in itself, it's 2 projects in English and 1 in Spanish for 2 states in the United States, 1 being Michigan and 1 being North Carolina. So when I attended that summit last year, I wanted to learn more again, how can I promote more awareness about the pandemic and COVID, particularly around distrust? And I thought that it was a wonderful opportunity for me to apply, and ended up receiving the grant for the Spanish perspective. It is one out of three national projects in the United States. And again, why did I decide to apply to this? Because as an artist who does not have the same access to circles that you'll have in terms of healthcare and those kind of environments, I didn't see our community represented as much. And by that, I didn't see community members working in the trenches as much as I wanted. And as you know, as an artist, I'm very passionate about representation. Who gets to be at the table and who gets to be represented, right? So I said, why don't we create a project that invites community members who look like me, who come from Latin America, who are immigrants, and who have similar lived experiences to participate in a project that promotes awareness as to why they decided to get vaccinated, which is called Me Vacuno Porque, or in English, I get vaccinated because, right? So again, when I applied last year in 2023 around March, I noticed that there was a lot of distrust, and I began to not only ask, but also read online the reasons why people were hesitant to get vaccinated. And I said, why don't I create a project that centers their communities and asks them, what are the reasons that you decided to get vaccinated? Again, not to contradict anything that has been said, but really to supplement all the efforts that have been happening throughout the year and throughout the years since COVID started. So to break down the episodes, it is a visually illustrated podcast in two formats. You can see them in audio format. You can listen to them via Spotify and or a website. And also you can see the visual representation of the podcast through our YouTube channel. This project has been co-produced with my co-producer, Dorian Gomez Pestaña, who is a filmmaker and a sound artist who was able to really give a lot of the technical part of making this project possible. And I always tell Dorian, this would not have been possible without her help. So again, Dorian, I always thank her for this opportunity. And also, me being here does not mean that I was the only one working on this project. We had over 9 community members who participated, and a group of very talented filmmakers, photographers working in this project that made it possible. And you'll be able to see who they are on our website. Again, to break it down, the first episode is myths and misconceptions around what is it that people have heard. And I wanted to be very mindful about not perpetuating the same myths and misconceptions that our community has continued to hear and I have continued to hear. But really, this particular episode serves to contextualize the project, to tell us where everything started. And then the second episode goes into what are the reasons that people decided to get vaccinated. And the third episode is really looking into the future. What do we learn from previous lessons, and how can we move from those conclusions and move forward to a healthier and brighter world? You know, I do want to talk about briefly some of the themes that we found. The first episode talks a lot about people don't get vaccinated because of fears around infertility, so not being able to continue family, and as well as governmental control, the same trope of putting chips and people not being able to have decisions on their lives, right? And the second one, personal reasons for getting vaccinated. A lot of people talked about protecting themselves, their family, as well as community. There was a lot of understanding on receiving the vaccine to live longer, to increase their opportunity to live, as well as take care of their loved ones. So a lot of the opportunity here was learning about protecting family. And then the third one, it's an artist, it's an activist, it's a someone who understands the importance about arts. I just didn't want to talk about the problems, but also wanted to invite guests to talk about solutions and how do we move forward, which is why the third episode talks about how can we combat these inequities in healthcare? How can we continue to create healthcare that is more welcoming, that is more accessible, and more inclusive for community members? And you can see all these things on our website. I'll be happy to share those to you. And also, we'll have a Q&A, so if you have questions, please save them. So Me Vacuno Porque, as I said, is a audio and visual podcast format that you can learn more about by visiting mevacunoporque.com. And you're also invited to the premiere, which is coming very soon, in about 3 weeks, in March 2nd, 2024, in White Memorial Presbyterian Church in Raleigh from 10:30 to 1. And you'll be able to see and experience the podcast in person. You can see the podcast right now, watch and listen to the podcast online, but this will be an opportunity to not only learn from the guests as well as ourselves, artists, and there'll be a panel to talk about these things that are super important to us. So super excited, super happy for the opportunity that you all invited me to be here. And I'll be happy to answer questions, comments, or anything else that you may have.
Muchas gracias, Antonio. Thank you very much. While you are all thinking about those really important questions you're going to ask Antonio in a minute, I want to take a moment to pause and acknowledge what a win this is. Talk about an achievement. It is not easy to stop what you're doing and say, here is an amazing opportunity. Let me invest time and energy and effort and collaboration to apply without even knowing you're going to get it. And to receive the award for the whatever, English or Spanish, among what I'm sure was a very competitive group of other talented artists, is a testament not only to the authentic engagement that your team was striving for, but the work that went into putting it together. And often we are lamenting how much isn't going well, and I think it's always great to celebrate the things that are. So Antonio and team, this is amazing. Just getting the award, applying for it, and getting the acknowledgement. Wonderful. Good job.
Gracias. Thank you so much.
Good job.
Thank you.
For those who are listening who are curious about this kind of a project, do you have tips and suggestions for where might they look? How does one start going about it? Because I'm sure there are other people who have great ideas too, but maybe aren't aware of how to fund them. So maybe we can get started with that. And then I see Norma and Viviana also with comments.
So if I can repeat the question, Doctora Maradiaga, how can I share tips for people who are interested in funding and looking for money to find these opportunities?
Yeah, like do you have a newsletter that you recommend people sign up to, or a website? Yeah. How can other people who are wanting to get off the ground get their ideas resourced? Do you have been there, done that tips?
Yes, thank you. One would be continue to network. I found about this opportunity through one of my LinkedIn connections. They were shared and said, hey, there's an opportunity coming up in a few weeks, look at it. So social media, growing on the social circle as much as you can, and invest as much time and energy as you can on social media. In terms of applying to it, I think finding something that you are passionate about, something that you really care, something that individuals can see that you have the opportunity to make it feasible. I am not going to lie. When I looked at the application, it was daunting. I said, I am an artist. How am I learning or talking about healthcare? But I used this as a challenge myself and said, this will be an opportunity for growth. So if you're, scared or thinking about that kind of thing, it's all right, apply. The worst thing that can happen is getting a no. And plus, you have more opportunities to think about other projects in the future. So I to be honest with you, I did not expect for me to receive it, but it was just the opportunity that we needed in this state.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you again. All right. The one, the only, Norma Martí. Cuéntanos.
Hi, you don't want to see me because I'm retired and I'm wearing a t-shirt, sweatshirt, and I don't know if I combed my hair today. So, but thank you, Antonio. It's so good. And this is like synchronicity at its best. I just sent Viviana a text and a couple other friends, Dasmine over at the department, because somebody posted in my Mofongo Chicas WhatsApp some doctor from Spain talking about, some pediatrician talking about the fakeness of the vaccine and blah, 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 blah. And this is 2024. And I'm like, they're still out there? Oh my God. And so I did a little digging and, nobody's ever heard of him. I mean, he's a doctor, a pediatrician in Spain, but the video, the Facebook video was 2022. And he was talking about the vaccine like it was, the plague. And so I think it's so important. And I can't thank you from the bottom of my heart after all the work that went into getting our community informed and vaccinated and the many people that did die because they were not vaccinated. This is still a topic that needs to be out there. And the way that you've done it is so well done. Not only entertaining, but informative, and again, captures everything that needs to be captured. So gracias, joven, gracias, gracias, gracias.
Thank you, Norma. I appreciate your words. I think it's important to work together. I think one of my biggest advice, my biggest tips is joining forces. Artists, activists, people like me, community leaders with the medical field to join efforts, because there's some, both I usually don't like to think about limitations, but there are different ways that we can reach people, different abilities. And I think that art plays such a beautiful part in culture. And why not supplementing both that?
Viviana?
Thank you, Antonio. Sorry I wasn't able to be at the beginning to welcome you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I would love to know what were the most important lessons learned. As somebody who continues to see patients who still are not trusting the vaccine, who have seen people get really ill from COVID and still having trouble deciding that they want to have a vaccine, or have decided they're not going to get any one. Tell me, I would love for you to share, what are the things that you thought were most important as you were doing this project?
So for me, Doctora, I didn't want to. Yes, we base a lot on the science. I think that's important. But from our preliminary interviews with the 9 committee members and Doctora Edith Nieves Lopez, a lot of the distrust, and misinformation came from language and themes and topics that were not relatable to communities. As I said, we continue to see a lot of doctors, a lot of heads of departments, and people like that shared a lot of information that seemed too technical and not understandable to community members, which is why I decided to create something that people could see themselves. As you can see, community members who are here in North Carolina in language that was understandable, language that was clear, and language that promoted understanding about the vaccine. I don't know, and that's a great question that I have as well, in terms of how can people think about pursuing vaccination after hearing this, and it's something that we want to continue to promote. But I can tell you that our social media engagement has been positive so far. In about 2 weeks since we launched the project, we received many comments around the importance of this project and how people can see themselves represented. Again, this project can grow in so many ways. It can expand and develop, and I think that's a wonderful next step.
You know, Antonio, some of the conversations we've been having in the pediatric world is the recent anniversary of the varicella vaccine, which I think is 20-something years. And hearing the stories of the folks who were practicing at that time sounding very similar. People who were suspicious, people who were worried, you know, same stuff. New year, same stuff. And it's a reminder that it's not the first time in history that this kind of thing has happened. It's a natural human tendency that repeats itself, although in this case, very prominently with a global pandemic. So I'm curious how you think the new technology, thank you, Viviana, 1995, how the new technology you think has the potential to make an impact, whether it's further reach, or how do you see this medium as an asset to tackle an old problem in a new way?
Thank you so much for that. Not only the people that we interviewed, but also the visual elements that I can share with you all. A lot of the visual components are intentionally designed to feel warm, welcoming, and allude to our Latin American heritage. It's something that I have not seen so far. I usually see very cold, distant visual imagery that is not inviting, that can put people that I would feel uneasy to continue learning more about. Again, I can talk more about the visual elements and the auditory as well. We did music that is also reminiscent of a country's music from as representative as the North and South America. Didn't want to just have one particular representation of music as well as elements. And the people who participated, we had people from not only Mexico, countries from El Salvador as well, and also not only from different countries, but different age groups, people with different lived experiences, different work histories, people working in nonprofits, people working in healthcare, as well as people working in tech. Oscar Romero, who is a engineer in computer engineer, was able to talk about the importance of debunking myths and the importance about using technology to not continue to share misinformation. So this is a 15-minute podcast, and we had over 9 hours of material and footage that it was very challenging for us to pick the things that really because we saw that everything was important. There was so much to talk and say. But I think the most important thing, and that would be the representation of people, of imagery, and people like us. I think that when people look, committee members who look like them, like myself, people who you see here, they may be likely to open up and maybe not get the vaccine, but at least consider the thought about why is it that people decided to get vaccinated, which I think it's it's an important step. Maybe not the ultimate solution, but a good step to consider.
Thank you, Antonio. I see that we have many talented community health workers here. Veo aquí unas caras de personas con excelente talento en este aspecto, alcanzando a la comunidad directamente. Les quería invitar a alguna o alguno de ustedes que quizás pueda compartir qué están escuchando con respecto al tema que presenta Antonio. ¿Qué tipo de mensaje han usado que sienten ustedes que funciona bien y quizás qué tipo de acercamiento, mensaje no les ha funcionado tan bien? ¿Quién nos puede compartir directo de la comunidad las estrategias? Vamos a ver, Griselda, muchas gracias. Adelante.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Bueno, honestamente siento que hay mucha, no quiero decir que es desinformación, sino que no se ha amplificado bien el mensaje en cuestión de la vacuna, de que ya, porque preguntan mucho, ¿qué dosis es? Y yo lo que les digo no es que no es una nueva dosis, es que ya se ha convertido como una vacuna más, como la del flu de cada año. Entonces, es simplemente la vacuna del COVID como la del flu que cada año te pones, o no ha cambiado. No te voy a decir que es la dosis número 29, 39, 48, porque no existe. Entonces, siento que ahí es donde la comunidad sí se queda y dice, no, pero es que quiero que me expliquen por qué antes era la dosis 1, le digo, no, le digo, simplemente ya quédate con esto, ya el COVID ya se quedó como el flu. Y simplemente es una vacuna que año con año te vas a estar poniendo. Siento que es eso, que no se ha amplificado ese mensaje con la comunidad, porque no siento que sea desinformación, siento que la gente sí está entendiendo un poco de que pues el COVID sigue. Porque también esa era otra, pero si ya me vacuné del COVID, piensan que este tipo de vacunas también son iguales como el de la viruela o de las que nos ponen nuestro esquema cuando somos niños. Y piensan también eso de que si ya me la puse, ¿por qué me la tengo que volver a poner? Entonces, siento que a lo mejor eso es lo que hace falta un poquito más de información, de ponerla en un buen contexto entendible, cuál es la diferencia entre las vacunas que nos ponemos siendo niños, cuál es la diferencia entre esta que es el flu y el COVID, que año con año tenemos que estar poniéndolas para no estar expuestos. Ahora con en el invierno, siento que mucha gente que no creía antes, porque decían es que si ya me la puse y me pusieron el refuerzo, no lo necesito. Y ahora que vieron que esta alza de enfermedades respiratorias, sí, muchos acudieron a preguntarme, a ver, vuélveme a explicar, porque algo me perdí, mi familia está enferma y todos estamos vacunados, ¿qué pasó? Y ya, ok, pues se les vuelve a explicar. Entonces sí siento que a lo mejor sería importante crear espacios, ya sea informáticos como los que está haciendo Antonio, o también ya sea flyers o cosas así donde se explique adecuadamente cuál es la diferencia entre las vacunas que nos ponemos de niños, cuál es la vacuna entre el flu, COVID y lo que está pasando, y que no existe una nueva dosis.
Sí, gracias, Griselda. Tu comentario verdaderamente trae a luz temas de los medios de comunicaciones que no tienen necesariamente que ver con esto solamente, pero cuando el mensaje se complica, que hasta las propias personas que dan el mensaje no lo entienden bien, pues es normal que no se va a entender bien el concepto. Entonces ahí vienen las fallas de las comunicaciones, que es confuso. Ya de por sí la ciencia es confusa y si el mensaje es confuso, pues obviamente nos vamos a confundir. Entonces agradezco el punto de que es importante hacer las cosas lo más sencillo posible y de ahí si alguien tiene dudas, agregar más. Viviana, por favor.
Y el problema también es que estamos jugando en contra de una campaña muy importante de desinformación. Norma comentaba que ella le habían pasado todo un video de 20 minutos de aparentemente médicos de España que están hablando en contra de la vacuna. O sea, tenemos un problema de antimovimiento, anticiencia de vacunación, que es un problema serio además. Entonces, Antonio, eh, realmente es súper importante que haya uno pensaba, ¿verdad?, que pasó todo, vimos la diferencia, cuánta menos gente murió gracias a haberse vacunado, a tener el sistema inmunitario listo para defenderse, vimos cómo cayó el número de nuestra comunidad en la terapia intensiva, en la hospitalización, y el sitio, hay gente que todavía tenía que eso ocurrió.
Y eso es muy cierto, Viviana, porque hay estudios de eso y el grupo de personas que inician esta desinformación es un grupo bien pequeño, pero causan el 80% de la desinformación y se lo pasan al uno y de ahí al otro y de ahí estás en el grupo de amigas de mofongo. ¿Cómo es, Norma? Yo quiero ser parte de ese grupo. ¿Cómo me puedo unir a ese grupo? Y se va regando la voz. Entonces, más importante aún el trabajo de Antonio y su equipo, porque estamos combatiendo fuego con fuego, ¿no? Arte con arte y con los mismos medios visuales y auditivos y artísticos que estamos viendo por el otro lado. Así que
Correcto.
he ejecutado ese punto.
Y también quiero añadir que es importante tener espacios donde la gente también se escuche, tenga oportunidad de comunicar sus sentimientos. Al punto de Griselda anterior, que la gente bueno, la gente que entrevistamos estaba enojada de por qué tienen que vacunarse otra vez, por qué solamente con una, no es suficiente. Entonces hay mucha frustración todavía, no se entiende muy bien por qué, entonces creo que es importante crear oportunidades donde, como dijo la doctora Edith Nieves López, donde compartamos estas frustraciones, miedos, preguntas, donde se nos escuche y no solamente pues podamos pensar en soluciones, también involucrar a la comunidad que está afectada directamente en espacios donde usualmente no tienen acceso.
Así es. Araceli, te veo ahí con la mano. Gracias por compartir hoy. Cuéntanos.
Bueno, primero quiero felicitar el proyecto que tienen con este podcast. Veo a varias de mis compañeras que participan y me siento muy contenta de que se siga trabajando en este tema porque, por ejemplo, este mes que tenemos el mes de vacunación con Sharon de Latin 19 y Bursity Strong en la farmacia Walgreens todo el mes de febrero, pues hemos estado entonces ahorita trabajando, contactando a la gente para poder hacer citas, la gente que no ha tenido su vacuna y dicen, pero yo ya me puse 3 o ya me puse 4, no necesito más. Pues yo creo que nos hace falta más información como al principio de la pandemia, porque cuando estuvimos con el problema de la pandemia, entonces, boom, se saltó toda la información para informar a la gente, las campañas, los hospitales. Y lo que veo ahora es que, por ejemplo, la gente que me ha tocado hablar con ellos y dice, pero ya no hay esa enfermedad, porque ya no se oye como al principio que la gente está en el hospital. Yo no tengo familiares que están en el hospital por el problema de COVID, o yo no tengo ni siquiera vecinos que están en el hospital. Como que no se oye tanto que el COVID lo tenemos aquí todavía. Me tocó hacerle una cita a una persona ya mayor y la señora dijo, sí, yo quiero mi vacuna y vivo con mi hijo. Y le dije, ¿puedo hacer la cita para él también? Y su hijo respondió, no tomó el teléfono, pero dijo, ay, el gobierno nos quiere tener tontos con esa vacuna, yo no lo voy a permitir, que se vacune mi mamá si ella quiere. Entonces pienso que eso que están haciendo ustedes es muy bueno, que por los varios medios de ahora con esta tecnología podemos compartir y que la gente lo vea, pero también tenemos que llegar a la gente que no tiene redes sociales y que es más difícil para ellos, ¿verdad? Gracias.
Gracias, Araceli. Brevemente, sabemos muy bien que hay una brecha muy grande en la tecnología, por lo cual decidimos no solamente enfocarnos en formato digital, pero también en eventos en persona, donde podamos llevar esta información a comunidades.